Thank you. There we go.
It's great. Thanks very much, Pat. Thanks everybody for being here. The first thing I'd like to do is just what is becoming important for us in at least in Canada and in the education and the coaching circles that I live in, is just to do a land acknowledgement. And we're from all kinds of different places in the world. And so I just want to acknowledge that in Nova Scotia, I am in the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and I'm a settler here. And that I take a lot of comfort only in the fact that when the Mi'kmaq and the British settled the treaty, that it was called the Peace and Friendship Treaty, which says a lot about who we are and how we want to be here. And my desire is that we can all be part of that wherever we live, of helping in living in peace and friendship. So I just want to acknowledge that. I'm going to share my screen and get this PowerPoint going. There we are. So Pat gave you the first part of the title. I like long titles, I guess. So this is embodying a coaching mindset. And what I want to do here with you in our conversation is to explore this new ICF competency and demonstrating some of the ethical practices that are also been shifting with ICF and how they show up in our relationship with clients. If we were going to do any one of these things completely, we could spend way more than 90 minutes on any one of these things. But I just thought I wanted to focus on our conversation on how we do this together in coaching and probe into some of the shifts that have occurred with with our world, how we live together, some of the things that are going on in the systems in which we coach, and how all of that involves embodying a coaching mindset. And one of the things that I love about this is, notice it says embodying a coaching mindset. It does not say the coaching mindset. So that is an important clue in my mind to that a coaching mindset is evolving. It's intuitive. It's all about who we are and how we continue to understand that more fully. So I'm not an expert. It's the last thing that I ever want to be, is an expert. What I want to do is, as a learner, engage in a conversation with all of you. And I think there's about 10 of us. This is perfect, great size. And let's have a conversation, and so that we can share what we see here from our own perspectives, and learn from each other. Because I think that the beauty of this size group and the beauty of this coaching mindset idea is that we are learning from each other. And one of the themes in the new ICF ethical approach to ethics is that it's ethics of relationship. So it all fits together. So here's the objective or objectives. So just want to put lenses on coaching the whole person. You've heard about coaching versus coaching the problem versus coaching the person and all of that. But I want to extend that and push the envelope there around coaching the whole person. And we're going to explore the values and the ethics of a coaching mindset. Agenda is very clear. I'm going to talk for a little bit about values and ethics and coaching mindset in two segments. talk a little bit, probably too long, but then ask some questions and hopefully we'll get some conversation going. And then another couple segments and have some more questions and conversation. And then if there's any other lingering thoughts or questions, and then we can have some time for that. And then I always like to hear an aspiration or intention when we're finishing. So we want to look at values, ethics, coaching mindset as a whole. And when you look at the new competencies and how all of this fits together, it's more like a tapestry than a list. And I want us to think about it that way. How do we integrate what we're doing in these relationships that we are privileged to have as coaches? So a big shift that has occurred with the ICF Code of Ethics is that they start now with a perspective on values. And what's pretty curious about this is these came out in 2018, I believe, and they were revised in 2022. A lot of things have changed in terms of values since 2018 or 2019, whatever it was. There's a shift from adhering to an ethical code to living ethical practices. This is the shift. It says that the credential coach needs to demonstrate the ethical code of ethics in everything that they do. One of these points that is important is that this value of humanity, and it's expressed as a commitment to inclusivity, dignity, self-worth, and human rights. That was not there before. Also another value, and I'm just pulling out two here as examples, around equity, recognizing and respecting all identity groups and their contributions. Pretty important in terms of where we are in our world today. So core competency number 2 is embodies a coaching mindset. Core competency number 1, of course, is demonstrates the ethical code of ethics in everything. And the essence of this is that coaching mindset is a mindset that is open, curious, flexible, and client-centered. And if we're going to weave or link values, ethics, and coaching competency in general, then the question is here, how does the coach remain aware of and open to the influence of context and culture on self and others? This comes from the core competencies. So this is a part of the definition. Influence of context and culture on self and others. Just keep that in mind because we're going to come back to this question. Then we have ethical principles. And ethical principle, one of them is avoid discrimination by maintaining fairness and equality in all activities and operations while respecting local rules and cultural practices. Very interesting that that's there. And again, that's a shift. And in definition, this includes, but is not limited to, that sounds very legalistic language, includes but not limited to discrimination on the basis of age, race, gender expression, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, disability, or military status. Now, from my perspective, being a Canadian, I find that point of military status as being quite interesting, but that could have a lot of impact on folks, clients, coaches in different countries, especially those who might require military status of people or only military status of men. I have a client now who served the obligatory 2 years of military service in their country when they were quite a bit younger. Embodies a coaching mindset. let's look at this from a perspective of cultivates trust and safety. Coach acknowledges and respects the client's unique talents, insights, and work in the coaching process. Now, we know that the unique talents, insight, and work that we each bring is framed and contextualized with the individual and environmental challenges that client faces, our cultural context. I'm going to ask about this in a moment. What is it about your culture, or what is it about you that in how you understand yourself that influences your coaching? And it could be race, sexual orientation, lived life experiences, educational privilege or not, whatever it could be. The point here is that in order to weave all of these competencies together and to be ready to, and more as open as we can be in the moment to coach the whole person, we need to understand these things for ourselves. Let's look at maintains presence. We've talked a lot about coaching presence. That's competency number 5. And the marker or the piece of evidence that we would be looking for in this kind of coaching is acts in response to the whole person of the client. So this is where it fits the who. You're going to get these slides, by the way, so I'm not going to read this because this is long. But the who or the whole person is the client as a human being, their internal way of being that influences the way or guides the way they think, create, relate, learn, feel, value, view the world, choose to be in the world. So when we're coaching from a coaching presence point of view, being person-centered and focused on the client, which is about coaching mindset, who is this person and who are we as we meet this person? One of our students in this mentor coaching course that I'm involved with now continues to ask about how does power play into the role. And if you've been a person who has been had or perceived to have had power, then that is something that we need to come to terms with, because that influences how we see the world and how we see our clients. Now, this is this session's being recorded, and I'm going to invite us into some conversation here. And as I do this, I realize that I'm asking you to put yourself out there a little bit, and so I would like you to be as engaged in this as you feel like you can be. And I would ask us, obviously, to respect that confidentiality of what is said here stays here. And anybody who's listening to this recording afterwards, I would expect that same thing as well. Okay, so let's just throw this out a little bit here. What's one aspect of your life that impacts how you see the world? Anybody? Just put your hand up if you like, or yeah, or use the little hand thing
My little
on the
hand.
screen. Paula, you go ahead.
I could start first.
Sure.
I would say I've had the privilege, an absolute privilege, of working with in my earlier career teens at risk from the streets of Vancouver, but also my international travel and work in countries abroad where freedoms are very different, and this whole ethical sense of who I am as a person is very different depending on the culture that you come from. And being a minority in a culture and having experienced that has really enlightened me in my professional world in healthcare and now in coaching, how I see people.
Great. Thanks, Paula. And so Rosie, I think you're on iPhone.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Or hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I live in the United States and the Midwest, but my parents are from Sicily. So being the daughter of immigrants, I think has really influenced and shaped the way I see the world. As even though I may look like a lot of people in the US, my parents held tight to their culture. We would visit there a lot. And I think it just gave me a broader perspective of the world. And I think it has helped me on my journey with my clients, because I tend to always be curious, trying to understand a new perspective. And as a little kid, I felt like I was constantly trying to explain to my parents what about American culture. And when I was in school, I was trying to explain Italian culture. And that just, I think, really trained me, for lack of a better word, as an adult, to always be looking that, hey, there's many perspectives in this world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
to be curious.
Thank you. Thanks. Great. Appreciate that. Sophia, sorry.
That's okay. I'm trying to turn my camera on.
There you are.
Yeah, hi. Very much like Rosie, I grew up in two cultures, the American/Irish one at home and the small Greek island community on the outside. So I definitely grew up in two worlds, and I feel that at this point in my life, it has equipped me really well with that tool to be super extra open to everybody's background. And it was challenging growing up in that kind of an environment, but I am able to access what my clients are going through more easily. I focus on bicultural life coaching and expat life coaching. So that's how it helps me.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So we've got two examples of people who kind of lived transnationally, transculturally, and bring that to coaching. And yeah, Lucy.
Thank you. So I speak from a slightly different perspective of saying that I grew up in a really tiny rural community. And I really not only draw on those roots, but I'm definitely guided by it every day, of the fact that the real sense of community, and that it takes a village, and that that whole connection, and that we're all learners and we're all growing with and because of each other.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. So the geography, the people around you, the demands of small community life, or the excitement of small community life, whatever way you want to look at it. Yeah. Thank you, Pat.
I've had the privilege of not only living in two cultures, because I was born in Italy and was immigrated with my parents when I was a baby to Canada. So, Italian culture at home, Canadian culture outside the home. I've also had the privilege, since I've been married, to live in 4 different provinces in Canada and a little bit in Europe. So I've had a little bit of that experienced communities. I mean, and then there's diversity in Canadian culture as well, and a little bit in Europe. And I feel privileged with all that, because it made me realize that there's still so much I don't know, so much I want to know, and it's only stoked my curiosity further.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah. Is anybody else? I can't see everybody here. Anybody else want to jump in? No, I think we're okay. Yeah, so, I think this is so important. I mean, if I tell you that I'm the eldest of 11 children, once your jaw stops from dropping, you'd say, oh, what was that like? Well, I mean, I was taught, expected, and lived in a place of great responsibility, great level of power and control, and great opportunities to nurture. I often tell the story that when I was 13 years old, I was babysitting 9 children when my mother and father went to the hospital to have my youngest sister. Who would do that today? Who would ever? Well, no, we wouldn't have nine kids, but that's what it was. That's what it was. So there was that sense of always that sense of responsibility. And one of the things that has challenged me with is that one of the things I call myself is a recovering rescuer, because I've always had to, I was very good at jumping in and solving the problem, because if the problem wasn't solved right away by whoever was there, it was chaos in our house, or more chaos in our house. And that was the way it was. So from a coaching perspective, and from that whole point of being client focused, person focused, and holding the person capable, that was a shift for me to do that. Yeah. So, and I also grew up in a world where knowledge and education was really important. And so I haven't let go of that, but I have let go of the fact that because I have a knowledge and education, I know more than everybody else, which is kind of good, kind of important. And grew up in a world of great privilege and stable family life. Quite impressive for me now as I look back on that. Okay, does anybody have any questions or want to raise anything else on this? Just please jump in. Yeah, jump in. No, we're good. Okay, good. Let's go to the next question. So if anybody would like to share, what's one coaching experience when you felt deeply understood for the person that you are? And how did you feel? Put a hand up or speak up. Stacy.
Hi, Brian. I think the one that comes to mind most was a coach who was blending modalities and taking a coach approach to grief recovery. And the deeply understood part for me at the time was that it wasn't the traditional definition of grief, but from a professional perspective. So job transition, career change, from that perspective. And it was, it was a really open and curious way of approaching our engagement. And I would say that's the coaching experience that at the time felt that I was seen in a different way than traditional society or organizations would have seen that experience of grief and loss.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fantastic. Fantastic. That coach had some kind of perspective on grief and loss that was very real, that they were able to share. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? One of the this actually only happened fairly recently for me, and it was at of all things a conference, and an online conference right from where I'm sitting right now. And it's not my favorite thing to do, to be sitting here for more than an hour and a half at any given time, but so part of my my experience is that I was a Roman Catholic priest for a number of years, from 1978 to 1995. And again, during that period of time, the scandals around sexual abuse of children by clergy were blowing up everywhere. And more recently, not that I knew anything of this was happening, but the residential school challenges and realities in Canada were there. When I realized not that long ago that the last residential school in Canada closed in 1996, and I started to look around at who was there and who was leading and all that stuff, I realized that I knew a lot of these people. And that was a real burden for me. Both of those situations are a real burden for me in terms of trying to understand myself and be understood by people. Now, I can guarantee you that 2 months ago, I would not be sharing this story with you. I can guarantee you. So this is very new. And what happened in a coaching session was that I was supported with great grace and space to acknowledge what was holding me back from moving into being a person who could talk about that and change, and hopefully bring some change and some healing from that. And that happened in a coaching demonstration, and that for one of the first times when I shared that story, the coach didn't say, "Oh my God, is that true?" They weren't blown away by their own thinking of, "Wow, that's too much. I can hardly comprehend that." And the coach was very much, "What was that like for you? What's that like for you now?" So it was a much deeper understanding of coaching me as the person, because I don't care what anybody thinks about it. As a client, I want to be cared for about what it's doing for me or to me and how it's getting in the way. And I have to tell you that I've been talking about this ever since. So I feel pretty pumped. About it, and feel like it's been a real breakthrough and very free. So the point of these two questions is that our lived experience does inform how we coach. And the more we can become aware of our lived experience, the more we can become deeper and more fully embodying a coaching mindset that embraces the wholeness of people and helps humanity and all the other values around ICF Code of Ethics come alive in our coaching conversations. This is what this is about. This isn't about ticking off boxes. This is about living it. So that's why I'm really, really happy. Thank you for sharing the things that you've shared, folks, and for helping me to feel safe enough to share what I shared as well. Do we have any other thoughts or comments or whatever about all of this at this point? Put your hand up or jump in. Whatever. Yeah, Trudy, thank you.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for everything thus far. I just want to say, and I wanted to mention it earlier, but I come from South Africa, and we have a history of the sort of privileged minority and the majority being unprivileged, and all that's gone on over the years with apartheid. And I actually never lived through that because I was from Zimbabwe. But I think what's interesting now, I'm finding with coaching and with people in general, are the assumptions we quickly make about people based on what we can quickly see or sort of ascertain. And
Oh,
this country, your hair can differentiate you, just, you know, the way you dress, the way you walk. People are making assumptions. And these days, you can't put people into cultural or racial boxes because, you know, so much has evolved over the years. And, there's different socioeconomic levels in every culture now. And I think that for me at the moment is something quite top of mind, you know,
yes.
in my own work and how I see my client, but also how they're seeing the world and why, you know, they quickly judge someone based on something that they can see as opposed to getting to know the human. And we all actually a lot more alike than we realize, especially when you work with, you know, people from the street or people who've been abused or underprivileged. We actually more alike than we're disliked. Disalike, but we don't initially realize that. So I just wanted to, just to share that as a thought that's coming up at the moment.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that, Trudy, because we don't know. We don't know. We assume. We assume that our assumptions are our knowledge, and that's not always the case. And so as coaches, that takes us into another whole world. And I think one of the other things, and I realized this at a very young age about privilege, and about I guess the reality of how my life was at that point and how others was. I was working in I was actually doing some training in a medium security penitentiary in Nova Scotia, federal government penitentiary. So these men were all serving 2 years or greater sentences, and the ones that I met, most of the ones that I met were my age, mid-20s at this point, doing life sentences for murder. And when I was listening and hearing, what the biggest change that occurred to me is that with one shift in circumstances, I could have been there too. It's just about being lucky enough or fortunate enough to have the security to live in a way that didn't result in a problem like that, in an action that I was a prisoner for life with. So that's because if you're committed to life in prison, you're always in prison, whether you're on the streets or not. So I think the more we can realize how some of these things in our lives can make such a difference, the more we can let go of what we assume about other people. That's important. One other thing, Trudy, this came to me a couple of years ago. I think you're right on about assumptions about how we see people and how we think about people, and of course all that's around bias and all of that kind of thing. It's all in there, so we don't need to unpack that. However, I think as coaches, we also want to ask ourselves, how does our client see us? How does the client see us? So I can tell you that they see me as an old white guy. And whatever goes with that goes with it. I need to own that. That's part of it. And so there's a lot going on in these relationships. If I'm not comfortable with being an old white guy, then that could be really threatening to me. All right. Any other thoughts or things that people would like to say? Thanks for provoking all that, Trudy, in me. Oh, we good? Okay. All right. Let's move on here a little bit. I've got a couple more content slides, and I just need to move you a little bit so I can actually read my slide here. So let's go back to coaching. Embodies a coaching mindset. Competency number 6 is around is about listening actively. And the marker number 5, which aligns with a coaching mindset, inquires about or explores how the client currently perceives himself in their world. Some of the key words here are partnering. How does our listening demonstrate that we are together in this quest? Checking in. What's that like? What's it like to be an old white guy in this world? You know, what's it like? And therefore it means checking in for ourselves. Noticing. I was doing a supervision session recently, and I just noticed that the coach I was working with tensed up when she was describing a certain situation. And so I asked, what were you noticing about yourself when that happened? And she talked about being tense. So we unpacked what was that all about. So she was not only trying to listen to her client, trying to listen to herself at the same time. And because I noticed it and asked it, I was listening to myself. So it's inquiry about the world that we live in. And it's deeper than the words. It's about how we perceive ourselves. And again, that feeds into that question that I like to ask: how do others perceive me? How do others see me? Now, we talk also about evoking awareness, and awareness is the 7th competency area. Coach asks questions about how the client, or such as the client's current way of thinking, feeling, values, needs, wants, beliefs, or behavior. The coach that helped me get through this impasse that I shared with you earlier asked me about how I felt about it. Stuck. What do you really value in the world? Well, I want to be a person of change. How can you be stuck in this and be a person of change at the same time? Boom. It just blew the thing apart, and it started to open that up. So every question that I was asked and that we as coaches need to ask needs to come from the unique story of the client. Not our story, from the client's story. Now, I'm true confession here. I love asking questions. I write lots of questions down, and I hate lists of questions because they stop me from listening. They stop me from listening to what's real in this person's situation, or what the person is bringing to the session at the time. If we're going to be in that coaching mindset, be evoking awareness, be listening, then we need to let go of our list of powerful questions. And we need to create our powerful question in the moment. That's a difference. And if we can create that powerful question based on our curiosity, for instance, about the client's way of thinking, feeling, beliefs, or about the client's experience, about some of the things that we've shared, then that's what comes from the unique story. And then, of course, we need to say, you can ask, you can tell me I'm crazy with this question, answer it if you like or not, because that means we ask it and let it go, right? That's the thing. We don't want to be stuck in our own questions. All right, let's see if we can explore some of this a little bit. So listening actively. Now, some folks might do group coaching. so I've kind of thrown group coaching in here. And my question for you just to throw out here is, what are your approaches to inquiry about how the group or the client perceives their place in the world? And share some experiments that you've made, or some things that you've tried, or whatever. And again, this is a confidential conversation for everybody who's here and listening. So. Anybody want to jump in? Hand up. Stacy, yes, please.
What comes to mind from a recent was, I mean, we're always meeting our clients where they're at, but it was the client painting a picture of telling their story through a song or a lyric, and letting go of the fact, listening for that, but letting go that I might not know the lyric in its entirety, but if I could listen to how and why that lyric was important in that, expressing that situation or feeling, was a reminder just to meet them where they're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Do you mind me asking, Stacy, is what came after that? That my thinking
I would
for
say
you?
it's been a thread through our entire coaching engagement, that first mention, and continue to kind of create takeaways, the client creating takeaways for themselves, but based on a lyric or a song, something visual or auditory that would support their taking action.
Yeah, what I find really curious about that, and that is, it's interesting because it's not explicitly mentioned in these competencies, is the reality of neurodiversity. And that some people think in lyrics, some people think in metaphors, some people can read a book in one sitting and be really happy about it. Some people fall asleep after the first paragraph and need to hear it, or need to listen to it while
draw it.
or draw it or whatever. So you know, the approaches to inquiry is not only questions, but it could be invitation into metaphor, invitation into using your imagination or whatever, which I didn't think of that until you said it, Stacy. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah. Anybody? Trudy?
I just want to thank Stacey for that example, because it's just reminded me how important it is to get the metaphor from the client. And I find I'm quite good at coming up with a metaphor as I'm listening, because I think I believe I think in kind of visual pictures. But when I ask the client how they would put it into a metaphor, I'm always surprised by what they see. And it's never what I would have seen. And I think you've just reminded me, Stacey, of the power of that metaphor, or that picture, or that image, or, you know, do you see it in a circle or a square? You know, I might see it in a circle and go off on my sort of idea, but when I ask them, they never see it how I would have. And that's been quite a powerful shift over the years of getting the client to tell me how they see the world, you know. So thank you. That was a good reminder of that.
Thanks, Trudy, and thanks for reminding me and showing us that when we have conversations about things that are meaningful, that gratitude emerges. Very nice. Yeah. Something emerges that might be there, but isn't said. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I see with this piece that happens sometimes in groups, and sometimes with clients. I do not a lot of group coaching, but I've seen it it's very powerful in groups when the group is stuck in a healthy way. They're at a place where they really don't know how to move forward. And thank God I was informed. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with Otto Scharmer, who is I think he's German, teaching at MIT in Boston, and his work on Theory U, which I'm convinced is going to be Nobel Prize work. It's Nobel Prize level work. I'm convinced of it. That he will talk about being at the bottom of the U, which is the place of the most tension, most frustration, and the most possibility of something new happening. Because in order to get there, you have to let go of all the perceived, all the pre-existing things so that you can create some new things. And it's amazing how A, that metaphor works, and B, how clients can identify how they can get retrapped. Because it's very easy to jump out of the bottom of that U, which is so difficult, and just pick something and do it, and it be the wrong thing to do, or not sustainable thing to do. Then you got to go back down. So part of listening actively is also hearing that and exploring the fact that it's okay to be stuck, and that what are the possibilities that are coming out of that. And if you're a person who perceives that you have to have the answer and you have to have it now, then what are the limitations of that? Or what are the contingencies that you have around that? So I've been, many times hearing hesitancy in a very subtle way, hearing, well, I have to do something, so I'm going to do this, and then it moves to eventually to a greater level of certainty, which is often felt somatically, that, yeah, this is the change. This is the thing that needs to move forward. That not only takes great self-awareness, self-discipline when it works really well, or when you're present for that, but deep listening as to what's going on for the person and for you in the conversation. Because many of us as coaches want our clients to get value and get a result. Hey, that's why they're paying us. Sometimes it doesn't work as quickly as that. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to jump to go to the next question. What curiosities support the client or people in the group to tell their unique story? Anybody have any thoughts about this? Silence is not always great, eh? But I would just, I think that one of the things that there's great power in story. Great power in story, and I that's part of the reason why I invited everybody to the beginning of this, just to talk about something unique about yourself. And of course, part of the design of that is that's about self-awareness, identifying it so that we can be more who we are in the coaching relationship. The I think people are all different, and people are there's great diversity. Where inclusion happens is in the similarities and the connectedness in our stories. Because we when we're understood and we're seen and we're heard, then then we can feel like we're there's a sense of belonging, and there's a sense of my uniqueness is okay. And there's great power in that in a group. Does that resonate with anybody that they would like to share? Go ahead, Trudy.
I just want to share a little bit here. I actually as a coach have a storytelling company, and I just want to reiterate your comment about the power of stories and the power that a story ignites other people to tell their story. Not that in the coaching relationship you're going to tell your story, but I think the willingness for someone to listen and allow you to be vulnerable to tell your story is very powerful. And I think being curious to almost say to the client, tell me your story from wherever you want to begin. And that often is interesting because, you know, when you say tell your story, people think, oh, I must start when I was a child. No, it can be from wherever you want to begin, or tell me the bravest story you can tell me today. And then just listen to their story with utter silence. And it's incredible how it does actually ignite them and almost release something when it's told in a safe space. So I just, thanks again.
Yeah.
This is just a lovely reminder of that powerful, you know, gift that you're giving them to just, you know, listen to their story.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I want to check something here. Did anybody hear Trudy say active silence? Did you say that out loud, Trudy?
Active silence. Yeah.
Active listening with active silence. Wow. Okay. Did anybody? I thought I heard that. What a nice nice definition of the power of silence. Yeah, because it creates space and openness, and it's almost a visceral or an embodied curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Rosie, I think you're trying to jump in.
I was just curious more what you meant by the question. So I was going to ask that, but hearing you talk about it a little bit more has been helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Did it provoke anything for you to say about it, other than you're curious about questions?
More than I'm curious about stories.
Yeah.
Well, I just think that there's so much power in storytelling. You know, the narratives we tell about ourselves and our world shape and form our lives. I sometimes use story in my coaching, and I try to be mindful of self-managing with that, but just see that it's such a connection point, both ways.
Yeah.
For you know, the client to hear a story and to tell their story. And I just think so I was just curious a little bit more what you meant by it, and then hearing you talk about it just reinforced it for me. Great.
I appreciate that. Thanks. You know, here's something where when this has come into play in recently with people coming back to work and so on. I've had a number of clients who are in leadership roles, bringing people back to the office and all of that stuff now. And I don't know how that's playing out in wherever you are, but that they're perceiving great disconnect and great reluctance to be there. And even though they've acknowledging the loss of so much kind of hallway and water cooler talk and sharing and so on, and that the question I had, I've been hearing in myself is, what's the last 24, 26, 27 months been like for me? With COVID-19, being isolated. I don't just talk about COVID-19, being more isolated than I usually am. I'm doing a presentation in June that was scheduled for April of 2020. So it's over 2 years later. And that's that's a loss, it's an opportunity. And yet the thing is really different now than it would have been back then, because of the story of the experience of the last 2 years. And one of the things that has come out of all this is that when clients have started to say, well, well, one person said, I felt very isolated. I felt disconnected. I want to get more reconnected. And I just asked, I wonder if there's others in your group that have the same question, same experience. A leading question, I mind you, a leading question, but nonetheless, it turns out that this guy who's not kind of warm and fuzzy led this group conversation about what's it been like for the last 2 years being disconnected. And you just let it go. And it turned out that the group telling their story about young people being home with kids, men and women being home with spouses that they don't like, more expensive things going on, sickness among their families, all of that stuff that they carried on their own became validated and real as part of the story of this working group. And it's not the end of it's not the answer to the question, or it's not the answer to everything, but at least it leveled out the reality of how that group can work together going forward. Yeah, I'm just curious if has anybody else had any other thoughts about those kinds of things just in the real world that we've been living in, which is our beautiful almost post-COVID world. Yeah, anybody? Any thoughts? Okay. All right. So what else is on your minds here as we talk about these things? Time for you if you have a lingering question to put it out to the group. Or what about this? And what might be missing in what we're talking about here? Any thoughts? No? Okay. All right. I saw somebody light up there, but I guess not. Okay. Oh, Trudy, yes, please.
Just, I think the question that's literally for me is what are people not saying?
Yeah, yes.
And not just in this group, in life in general, because
Yes.
there's so much, going on about compassion fatigue and burnout, and it's like, what are we not saying? And are we saying what we think we should be saying? And are we agreeing because everyone says we should be burnt out? And I wonder, I don't know, I just wonder what is missing, and it's probably missing because we don't see what we don't see, and there's something new that we're not seeing because it's new and it's the new normal or whatever. I don't know. I just often wonder what we're not saying, and how we ask the question to get that out, and almost, and why we're not saying it, and are we afraid to admit something, or is there fear, or I don't know. Just that's just what's going through my mind at this point is what are we not asking or saying?
Yeah. Any thoughts, anybody? Yeah, appreciate the question. You know, part of the being in a embodying a coaching mindset is to use our intuition. And that sounds like a very intuitive way of being, Trudy. What's missing here? What's not here? What are we not asking? And yeah, and you know, the question that raises for me that lingers is how do we get the self-compassion and the and the courage at the same time to ask the uncomfortable question, like what's behind what you're saying there? Yeah, and I think it takes both courage and self-compassion to do that. Yeah, Pat.
I was just going to agree with Trudy. Sometimes intuition informs us that we've hit, or we think we've hit the issue, or whatever the underlying belief or the underlying challenge. What holds us back from asking those questions? So it makes me realize that at that point, I'm inserting myself, as opposed to using detached empathy and asking that uncomfortable question, you know, with love and with caring, and accepting that the client just may not want to answer it at that point. And then, as you said earlier, letting it go. That's a big challenge for me. The asking the uncomfortable question part. The letting it go, I'm good at, but it's the other part.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Lucy.
Well, I guess I might even be building on to the other two, because I'm not sure. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about trust and safety, because it's like trusting in myself and feeling safe, but also of really working to try and of really understanding and having a better intuitive sense of when the client may be feeling that. And so getting back to what Trudy said, and therefore, you know, is that the issue as far as what's not being said, is that I haven't done a good job of creating that safe, trusting space.
Yeah. So you okay if I just throw it out to the group first? Because I've got some thoughts, but I'm not an expert. So anybody, so Lucy's asking about trust and safety. You know, the phrasing of the new competency is cultivates trust and safety. So cultivates. Yeah. I think that's there's those beautiful active verbs at the beginning of each of these new competencies are great. So any thoughts or things people could share about that at this point? Trudy, go ahead.
The word cultivate makes me feel that it's going to take a bit of time. And I think we must be okay with that. And even acknowledge that we will build trust over time, or trust will be built over time. Because I've noticed with clients, the longer you see them over a period of time, the more they seem to open up. And I realize now it's because maybe trust was cultivated. You know, when we cultivate, it doesn't take 2 minutes. It doesn't take one word. It doesn't take an intention. It takes cultivating. It takes time to till and toil and be patient. And I think, you know, even safety and trust for me, the same would mean it takes a bit of time. And how do we build that as quickly as possible so that we get the best out of the whole journey? So yeah, thanks, Lucy. That was a nice addition to where we're going in a way, you know.
Yeah, thanks. So here's this is what I hear a lot of. I want this. No, this is what I hear a lot. This is a safe space. I say, I'm not safe until I feel safe. And as a coach, I'm making the assumption that I've got a place that I can create a container and believe if I create a container, the other person is going to feel safe. So sometimes I will ask, this is my, I will state something that this is my intent. What is it you need to feel safe? And then I can demonstrate, again, another way of doing this is by letting go of what I think or say or ask. So if I say, Lucy, why are you asking that question? And you don't answer me. And then I come back, so Lucy, why are you asking that question? It doesn't feel very safe. If I was hearing that, it doesn't feel very safe because it's more about me than it is about you. So allowing again, I can't believe I'm going to challenge somebody on that word later on today, but I used that word, so I fell into my own trap. But being open to where the person wants to be is about being equitable and level and expansive. The reason why I don't like allowing, which is actually in the ICF competencies, is that it implies that I have power, and I don't want that power, and I don't think it works that well. Although subliminally I might like to have it, I got to let it go. And the more I can do that, I think I have greater sense of safety, of at least being open. So let me reverse that. The more I feel like who I'm being coached by is partnering with me, is not holding anything over me, is letting me speak as I wish and hearing me, the more trusting I feel. Again, I just reversed my our thinking here. How do we create safety? Well, listen to how we receive safety, self-awareness, and how that works together. Is that so, Lucy? How's that landing for you?
Very helpful. I really appreciate the input. One more question, would you ever then check in later? Would you ever attempt to set a context to say, would you feel comfortable letting me know when you feel safe? Would that ever be appropriate?
Yeah, if the person, if it came out of how that relationship has evolved, one of the questions that I will ask along the line, and is check-ins, and we're supposed to check in on the agreement and all of that that stuff. Well, check in on not only how are we getting towards your goal, but how are you doing with this conversation? Is this working for you? Is there anything, again, we'll go back to Trudy's question. Is there any questions we haven't asked here that are important? Yeah, so it's about being open. And I think I just realized something about asking questions about the unknown. If we only ask questions about what we're certain of, we're not really being asked questions. We're not being very expansive. So yeah. Okay, any other thoughts on that before we kind of cruise to our wrap up here? Anybody? No? Good. Okay, so I'm gonna just ask you, either put it in the chat or say out loud before we go, if you wish, what your what a one-word intention or an aspiration coming out of this time together is for you. And you can do it whatever way you feel comfortable. And then we've got, I've got a commercial, 2 commercials, and a book draw. Anybody? Anybody? Go ahead. Have we got things coming up in the chat? Okay. Courage and self-compassion together. I like that. I'm not safe until I feel safe. Okay. Silence, presence and comfort with silence. Grace, permission, active silence. That's a real gift. Grace and openness, presence, comfort with silence. Marvelous. Marvelous. So I just want to say, oops, what's going on here? Thank you very much for having this conversation and being here, and your contributions to all of that. You've got the slide deck in the chat. You can download it. I think I realized yesterday that's probably the best way to get it to people. So fill your boots. It's great. And there's one commercial that's about the book, and it's about all the ways you can get it. And I promote. I love food. I've been privileged with food all my life, so I love supporting Feed Nova Scotia. And $2 donated to Feed Nova Scotia can deliver 3 meals anywhere in Nova Scotia. Now, Nova Scotia is not a huge place, but that's a pretty good return on investment. So that's something that I like to promote. And the last thing is all my contact information if you wish to follow up on that. But now you're going to have all of that on your and the email, the slide deck if you wish to download it. So I actually got to the commercials today. That's great. And we can finish early if we're okay with that, Pat. I'm okay with that. So thanks again.
Thank you, Brian, for a really, really enriching and great session. I know I got a lot out of it, and I hope everybody else did too. So I thought of a very transparent and equitable way to do this book draw. I have on the other side of this paper a number from 1 to 100. And I want to ask each and every one of you to come off the microphone and tell me your guess. And the person who is closest to the guess, to the number, to the actual number, will get Brian's book. So let's start with Lucy. Lucy, choose a number between 1 and 100. Brian, first of all, are you okay with that? I found transparent, equitable. Okay, Lucy.
Oh yeah, I'm totally letting it go.
Lucy, you're on mute, sweetie.
5.
Okay, Stacy.
3.
1 and 100, remember. Trudy.
60.
Okay. Celia.
5.
We have 2 people at 5. Choose another number.
Oh, sorry. 1.
Okay. Paula.
Okay.
53 and a half, not 53.
Rosie.
75.
Okay. Sophia.
37.
Okay. And Sasha.
32.
Ooh. Well, it
We
looks
need the
like
music from The Price is Right. 34.
Sasha, 34. I think Sasha's the big winner. So Brian, would you like Sasha to email his mailing address to ICF Atlantic or directly to you?
Well, Sasha, you're in Bulgaria, correct?
Serbia.
Serbia, yes. It may be better for me to email you an Amazon coupon or something.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So could you could you just put in your full name and your contact information in the chat, and then we'll take it from there. And trust me, I'll be back to you. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. Probably cost $100 to mail it. So
Thank you, everybody, for participating in that.
Thank you.
And congratulations to Sasha. And just a quick reminder, verbally, email us at icfatlantic@gmail.com for your CCE certificates if you want one. I put the document twice, but if you missed it, you can also email us at icfatlantic@gmail.com for the document, which is a PDF of the slide deck. Thank you. And if you have any comments or feedback, please feel free to come off the microphone and you know, say what you will.
great comments, and I really appreciate the comments in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a-
Bye-bye.
Have a great
Thanks, Brian.
day.
It was
a
wonderful.
great
Thanks,
weekend.
Oh,
everybody.
my pleasure.
A
my
very
pleasure.
special
Bye-bye.
time. It was amazing.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I know.
Bye, guys.
I'm going to stop the recording.